Leviticus 4. And YAHUAH spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yisrael, saying, If a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of YAHUAH concerning things which ought not to be done, and shall do against any of them, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto YAHUAH for a sin offering. And he shall bringeth the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the assembly before YAHUAH, and shall layeth his hand upon the bullock's head, and killeth the bullock before YAHUAH. And the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood, and bring it to the tabernacle of the assembly. And the priest shall dippeth his finger in the blood, and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before YAHUAH, before the veil of the sanctuary. And the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of sweet incense before YAHUAH, which is in the tabernacle of the assembly, and shall poureth all the blood of the bullock at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly. And he shall take off from it all the fat of the bullock for the sin offering, the fat that covers the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver, with the kidneys, it shall he take away, as it was taken off from the bullock of the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall burn them upon the altar of the burnt offering. And the skin of the bullock, and all his flesh, with his head, and with his legs, and with his inwards, and his dung, even the whole bullock shall he carry forth without the camp, unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn him on the wood with fire. Where the ashes are poured out, shall he be burnt. And if the whole assembly of Yisrael sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of YAHUAH concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty, when the sin, which they have sinned against it, is known, then the assembly shall offer a young bullock for the sin, and bring him before the tabernacle of the assembly. And the elders of the assembly shall lay their hands upon the head of the bullock before YAHUAH, and the bullock shall be killed before YAHUAH. And the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the assembly. And the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before YAHUAH, even before the veil. And he shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar which is before YAHUAH, that is in the tabernacle of the assembly, and pour out of all the blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering which is at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly. And he shall taketh all his fat from him, and burn it upon the altar. And he shall do with the bullock as he did with the bullock for a sin offering. So shall he do with this, and the priest shall make an atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. And he shall carry forth the bullock without the camp, and burn him as he burned the first bullock. It is a sin offering for the assembly. When a ruler has sinned, and done somewhat through ignorance against any of the commandments of YAHUAH, Eloheinu, concerning things which should not be done, and is guilty, or if his sin wherein he has sinned come to his knowledge, he shall bringeth his offering, a kid of the goats, a male without blemish. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the goat, and kill it in the place where they killeth the burnt offering before YAHUAH. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and shall pour out its blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering. And he shall burneth all his fat upon the altar, as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall make an atonement for him, as concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven him. And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, while he does somewhat against any of the commandments of YAHUAH, concerning things which ought not to be done, and be guilty, or if he sin, which he has sinned, come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he has sinned. And he shall layeth his head upon the head of the sin offering, and slayeth the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood thereof with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour outeth all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take awayeth all the fat thereof, as the fat is taken away from off the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall burn it upon the altar, for a sweet savor unto YAHUAH. And the priest shall make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. And if he bring a lamb for a sin offering, he shall bring it a female without blemish. And he shall layeth his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay it for a sin offering in the place where they killeth the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and shall pour outeth all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take awayeth all the fat thereof, as the fat of the lamb is taken away from the sacrifice of the peace offerings, and the priest shall burn them upon the altar, according to the offerings made by fire unto YAHUAH. And the priest shall make an atonement for his sin that he has committed, and it shall be forgiven him.